Do you keep livestock in this house? Is this livestock feed? You weren't trying to feed this crude stuff to Tommy, were you? I can't believe it. My mother-in-law said this, and threw my dish into the trash. What? Your family isn't my family. My only family has always been my mom, you know? How long are you gonna keep saying dumb stuff? Just so you know, there's a huge difference in value between my mom and your family. Anyone can see that, right? Although I was enraged just a moment ago, I had now completely calmed down. I truly despised Tommy, who was loudly laughing after belittling my family. Mom is moving in next month. Clear out your room? Seeing me not respond, Tommy emphasized with a raised voice. Hey, are you hearing me? Mom is gonna move in next month. I'll be on a business trip until then. In the meantime, make sure to clean up all your stuff, okay? Got it? Tommy glared at me with stern words, but I just smiled sweetly and replied, Sure thing. I'll tidy it up and then return to my bedroom. I once thought Tommy was a wonderful person who cherished his family. But in reality, he's just a pitiful man controlled by his mother, unable to even have his own opinion as an adult. I was never family to him. I wouldn't mind whatever he said about me. But he also spoke cruel words about my precious family. Unforgivable. Just as he wanted, I'll clean everything up nicely. He can look forward to it. I wish he and his beloved mother would just go to hell together. I'm Emily Smith, a 35-year-old housewife. I married Tommy last year, and it's been exactly a year now. I met Tommy at a gathering hosted by one of my friends. It was an event exclusively for men and women over 30, kind of like a mixer for adults. Tommy was there because a mutual acquaintance had invited him. Tommy was slender and tall, standing out among the male participants. Right at the start of the event, there was a slight buzz among the women because of him. However, when he introduced himself in a mumbled and soft voice, the interest from the ladies quickly faded. Admittedly, when Tommy spoke, he gave off a somewhat introverted vibe, which didn't seem to appeal much to the women. But I was sitting close by and didn't miss a word of Tommy's introduction. The most important thing to me is family. Tommy had indeed said that. His words resonated with me, and I found an opportunity to strike up a conversation with him. I feel the same way. Family is the most important to me too. I felt that behind his glasses, Tommy's eyes lit up. After that event, through my friend, who organized it, I got a call from Tommy. After several dates and finding that we got along really well, we started seeing each other. At the social gathering, Tommy seemed reserved, but usually he's quite the talkative type. Most of the stories that came from Tommy were about his family, mainly his mother. I truly admire my mom. She gave birth to me and raised me. I'm just so grateful. She means the world to me. Hearing him speak so fondly of his family made me cherish Tommy even more. Just like Tommy, my family is the most important thing to me. Irreplaceable. I have a father, a mother, and a younger brother who's in college. Back in the day, my dad's business had some rough times, and we faced financial hardships. But no matter what, we all stuck together with smiles on our faces. With experiences like that, I'm convinced that we share a strong bond as a family. Right now, my family is overseas because of my father's job. I stayed in the US because of my own job. If I hadn't married, I might have eventually moved abroad too. But then I met Tommy, feeling that Tommy, who cherishes his family just like I do, might be someone I can build a life with. My mom told me that she thinks you, Emily, and I could have a happy life together. So let's get married. And so a year ago, Tommy and I tied the knot. 1 year into our marriage, I've learned a few things about Tommy that I hadn't known before. First, Tommy's personality. Hey, Emily, I can't find my favorite shirt in the closet. You need to be on top of things. The Tommy I first met, who spoke softly and seemed so shy, turned out to be quite the self-centered man. Moreover, the sweet way he used to call me Emmy changed to Emily the day after we got married. At first, it caught me off guard, but I think it's just because we became closer. However, I wish he wouldn't yell over silly things. If you're talking about that shirt, you told me to send it for dry cleaning yesterday, and I did. It'll be ready tomorrow. Hearing this, Tommy made a visibly annoyed face. If I told you yesterday, you should have sent it out then. I could have worn it today. Think before you act. My mom would never make a mistake like that. With that, Tommy went out. I mean, he told me last night to drop it off at the cleaners. So, wouldn't it make sense that I take it today? Arguing with Tommy seems pointless since he doesn't really get it. And every time he always ends up mentioning Mom. One thing I've learned after marrying Tommy is that he truly holds family above all else. Cherishing a family is great, and I feel the same way about mine. In the same way as I feel about mine, that's why Tommy and I decided to get married in the first place. However, it seems that Tommy's perspective on this may be a bit skewed. Tommy's mother, my mother-in-law, absolutely adores him. And in response to that affection, Tommy was always clingy to his mother. I've met her a few times, especially during our marriage preparations. She seemed particularly interested in asking about my salary and what my family did for a living. Thankfully, I had been with the same company for years, and my savings and income were decent. I somewhat get the feeling that this may have been the deciding factor for them to agree to our marriage. But I figured that worrying about their child is natural for any parent, so I just let it slide. When we decided to get married, I already had a pretty spacious house that I had lived in with my family. So Tommy moved in with me to start our new life. While we were discussing how to allocate the rooms, Tommy said with a chuckle, "You know, I don't plan on having kids, so let's have separate bedrooms." My mom always said that kids are loud and take a lot of work. She didn't want to burden me with that. Isn't she sweet? And by the way, she mentioned that it would be great if the kids took after me, but it would be hell if they looked like Emily. The thought that Tommy's decisions about kids were so influenced by his mom's opinions made my head spin a bit. At that time, I believed Tommy would eventually want children, so I went along with it. However, there was a turnoff that happened later. One day, my mother-in-law announced she would be spending the night at our place. She had been over several times, but she always left before nighttime. This would be her first sleepover. Tommy was over the moon about hosting her, and I hurriedly prepared the guest room. But Tommy chimed in, "Mom's gonna sleep in my room, so it's all good." I wasn't sure what he meant by "it's all good," but when I tried moving the guest bedding to Tommy's room, he refused. I couldn't believe it, but when I went to wake them up in Tommy's room the next day, they were both sleeping in the same bed. It's great that they have a close parent-child relationship, but isn't sleeping in the same bed a bit too much? I felt like I had seen something I shouldn't have and quietly left Tommy's room. After that, I realized I would never want to share a bedroom with Tommy again. Another revelation after marriage was Tommy's attitude towards money. Maybe it's how his mother raised him, but Tommy believed in spending all the money he earned on himself. So he never contributed financially to the household. I've asked Tommy several times to contribute to our living expenses, but he said, "My mom always told me that the money I earn is mine, you know? By the way, your earnings are also mine because you're my wife." It's only natural, right? So shouldn't you contribute as well? Do you take care of the living expenses? And that was the end of that conversation. So Tommy never contributed money to the household, and calling it a hobby, he kept buying ridiculously expensive bicycles one after another. Then, without my consent, he even built a storage shed in the backyard for his bikes. Every day when I saw that shed, I couldn't help but feel a certain way. You come over so often, is your husband okay with that? One day, seeing how frequently my mother-in-law visited, I mustered up the courage to ask her. He's working out of state on his own. As long as he sends money every month, he doesn't care. I felt sorry for my father-in-law, knowing he's away from home for work. While Tommy always said family is important, it seemed like he only really cared about his mother. One day, Tommy enjoyed another meal prepared by my mother-in-law who had come over again. Of course, I had prepared a meal too, but she threw away everything I had made. "Do you have livestock in this house? Is this animal feed? You weren't really planning to serve this mediocre dish to Tommy, were you?" I can't believe it. Saying this, she dumped it plate and all into the trash. I stood there in shock as my mother-in-law began cooking. Watching silently, I noticed her using the same knife she had used to cut meat to now cut fruit. Chills ran down my spine. "What are you staring at? So creepy. I didn't make anything for you, so figure something out for yourself. That's expected." part of me was relieved. Watching Tommy savor a meal that seemed so carelessly prepared by my mother-in-law made me worried about our future. Like this, my mother-in-law frequently came over, bullied me, and left after being overly affectionate with Tommy. Ever since I caught the two of them sleeping in the same bed, I always found a reason to decline my mother-in-law's stayovers. I just couldn't stand it, and couldn't come to terms with it. Perhaps because of that, my mother-in-law's visits to our home became more frequent. Every time I came home from work, my mother-in-law was already in the living room. It happened quite often, and Tommy would sometimes be home during what I assumed was working hours. "Why are you home early?" When I asked Tommy, he replied, "I took the day off because Mom's coming over. If he's using up his vacation days like this because of his frequent visits from his mother, what's he gonna do in the future?" I felt deeply disappointed and dejected. I couldn't help but think that if he loved his mother so much, he should have just lived with her forever. After my mother-in-law left, I asked Tommy, "Can I ask you something? Why did you marry me?" Tommy looked surprised. Tommy looked surprised for a moment, but replied quickly, "Mom said, maybe you should get married at least once. That's why I attended that party. I got along pretty well with you, and she seemed wealthy, so Mom was like, isn't she a good catch?" Learning that he made the decision to marry with the casualness of picking out a watermelon at the supermarket with his mom made me want to sigh deeply. At the very least, I married Tommy because he was kind, gentlemanly, and cared deeply about family before we got hitched. I felt love towards him, but Tommy doesn't seem to harbor even a hint of affection for me. For Tommy, his mother is everything, and her word is absolute. For the first time, I seriously considered the idea of divorce, which I had avoided before. Could I really continue with Tommy like this? Deep in thought, I let out a truly heavy sigh. One day when I came home from work, something in the living room felt off. It felt emptier somehow. Then I realized what was missing. This home originally belonged to my family, so it had many items from my family, but they were now gone. A small bookshelf my brother made for me in school, a framed painting by my mother, and souvenirs from overseas my father had gifted me were all missing. My gold ring and pendant my mother gave me are gone too. When I got married, my mother, unable to come to the wedding, had sent me a gold ring and pendant as gifts. I had carefully placed them in a case in the bedroom, but they were gone. Many other cherished items given by my family were also missing. I frantically searched the entire house. I looked in my bedroom, Tommy's bedroom, and even the shed in the backyard Tommy uses, but I couldn't find them anywhere. I stood in the living room, dazed. Tommy, who seemed to have been out somewhere, came in. "What's up? Why is your hair all messed up?" Seeing my distraught appearance after desperately searching for something, Tommy laughed. For confirmation, I asked Tommy, "Something I got from my family is missing. Do you know anything about it?" Tommy's response was shocking. "Oh, that junk? I threw it out. It was always in the way. It's bulk trash day today, so I dumped it." I stared in disbelief at Tommy's words. It was my possession, a cherished gift from my family, yet Tommy said he discarded it. The ring, the pendant in my room too? You threw them out? Confronted, Tommy replied with a guilty look. "I don't know, maybe? That old junk." I could feel my temper rising. "Why would you do something like that? Those were my precious belongings. Why did you throw them away?" Startled by my raised voice, Tommy hesitated for a moment, but quickly retorted, "Your stuff is my stuff, right? My mother said so, didn't she? So, what's wrong with me throwing out my own stuff? And why are you so obsessed with your trashy family? We're married now, you know? Get over it. It's embarrassing." I couldn't believe what Tommy was saying. Wasn't it Tommy who was abnormally obsessed with his family? Is he referring to my family as a trashy family? His words were so absurd that I couldn't think straight. "You're calling my family trashy? They're your family too, you know? Why would you say something so cruel?" Annoyed by my retort, Tommy frowned. "What, you think your family is my family? The only family I've ever had is my mom. How long are you gonna keep saying such stupid stuff? Let me tell you this, there's a world of difference between my mom and your family, you know? Anyone can see that. Your parents only managed to bring someone like you into the world. That's why they're trash. But my mom, She gave birth to me. Do you understand the difference? Oh, maybe it's too hard for someone like you to understand. Any anger I had felt before had now been replaced by cold clarity. I genuinely hated Tommy, who was belittling my family and laughing haughtily. And Tommy's next words completely killed any feelings I had for him. My mom really liked this house, so I decided she should live here too. Seeing that I remained silent, Tommy's tone grew irritated. What? Do you have a problem? This might have been your house originally, but now it's mine too. If you don't like it, we can just get divorced. And with that, Tommy shoved divorce papers in my face. Tommy even had a lawyer's contact with the divorce papers. I bet that was what his mother's doing. Did he think this would make me submissive? I can't even muster a sigh anymore. Mom's moving in next month. Clean up your room. When I didn't respond, Tommy raised his voice, emphasizing, Hey, can you hear me? Mom's gonna be moving in next month. I'll be out of town on business until then. In the meantime, clean up all your stuff nice and tidy, all right? Got it? In my head, I just thought such a loud voice, nonchalantly. It's hard to believe this is the same man who introduced himself so softly when we first met. Facing Tommy's glaring eyes, I just smiled and cheerfully said, Sure thing. I'll tidy up. Then I returned to my bedroom. Once back, I immediately began packing. I'm still furious with Tommy, but getting those divorce papers was a silver lining. I paused my packing and made a call. After a couple of calls, my spirits began to lift. I once thought he was a wonderful man who cherished his family. But in reality, he's just a severe mama's boy who adores only his mother. It's good to care for one's mother, of course. But Tommy, he's just too much. Being dominated by his mom to this extent and unable to form his own opinions even as an adult, I almost feel pity. I tried to love his mother too, but it was impossible. I'm sorry, but I can't fit into his world with his mother. And I don't want to. To him, I was never family. If it were just about me, whatever he said wouldn't matter. But he said cruel things to my precious family too. I can't forgive that. Just as he wished, I'll clean everything up neatly for him. Look forward to it. I hope he and his beloved mother go to hell together. The next morning, my phone kept ringing non-stop. The screen displayed Tommy. I guess Tommy's business trip was over. I figured he would call soon, but on a weekend morning? Give me a break. I answered the phone. Before I could even speak, Tommy's enraged voice blasted from the other end. Hey, Emily, what the hell did you do? The house is gone. What's going on? From the other side, Tommy sounded really panicked. What's the matter? Didn't you say to clean up all my stuff? So I did just that. Tommy was lost for words at my response. Yes, I did just as he said and cleaned out all my belongings. After my family moved abroad, the house was under my name. My father had said I could tear it down or sell it. I wanted to stay a little longer, so I kept it. The day Tommy told me to clean up, I talked to my father. When I told my dad everything, he suggested selling the house, and that's when I decided to take action. I contacted a realtor immediately, sold the house, and it was soon demolished. Now it's just an empty lot. Are you out of your mind? Where's the furniture? Where's my stuff? Tommy's voice was now much weaker. What happened to the bravado from earlier? Most of the things, not just the house, but the furniture and belongings too, are what I've had since my single days. So I packed all of them up. Oh, and your stuff? It's all in that shed of yours that you're so proud of. When selling the property, I only left a tiny space about the size of a small closet in the corner of the yard. That's because that's where Tommy's shed, the only property he ever paid for, stands. Inside the shed are some fancy-looking bikes I don't quite get, and a few other things. I could sense the shock in Tommy's voice on the other end of the phone. At the other end of the phone, out of the blue, my mother-in-law's voice chimed in. Hey, Emily, what's going on here? Where's Tommy's house? I've just brought moving boxes in my truck. What am I supposed to do now? Come on, say something. After all the selfish decisions she's made over the years, you'd think she could handle this herself. Listening to my mother-in-law's angry tirade, I couldn't help but think, you know, Tommy is your husband, isn't he? What's with that attitude? I'm his mother, you're just a wife. You should know your place. A wife should just quietly listen to her husband and mother-in-law. Such unreasonable accusations. What does she think being a wife means? I'm truly relieved I took action before she could rob me of my dignity as a person. With all due respect, I'm no longer your daughter-in-law. I informed her that Tommy had handed me divorce papers. I also mentioned that I had recorded everything he said during that time. Ever since our marriage and Tommy's verbal abuse got worse, I started carrying a voice recorder. The divorce papers he handed me were even with a lawyer, so I contacted that lawyer. That's why we are now complete strangers. The telephone line went quiet. Just when I thought it was over, her loud voice rang out again. If that's the case, send me the money from the property division. The house, the furniture, it's all marital property, isn't it? You have to split it with Tommy. Send me the money. I took a deep breath and said to my mother-in-law, look, the house and all the household items are things I've been using since I was single. Tommy is well aware of that. And since we got married, he hasn't put a dime into the house. So we don't have any joint assets, not even a penny. Oh, that shed over there was built with Tommy's own money. Technically, that should be considered in the division of property, but I don't really need it. From the other end of the phone, I could hear my mother-in-law exclaim, "Is that all?" Indeed, that's all there is. In a year of our marriage, that's the only thing we managed to retain. And that was just for Tommy's personal satisfaction, something I didn't need. The misunderstandings have become so frequent that it's almost laughable now. What was the point of this marriage? She should be grateful that at least that meaningless shed remains. By the way, the location where the house stood has already been sold to a realtor. So, if you don't move out soon, it's going to be a problem. The location of the shed is fine. Right now, that's the only piece of land I own. However, please remove that shed as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll have to take this to court. To court. My mention of court seemed to strike a nerve with her. I could hear her grinding her teeth in frustration. Speaking of which, I wonder where Tommy is. I haven't heard his voice for a while. Hey, Tommy, don't cry and pull yourself together. It's all right. Just do as your mom says, okay? It seemed Tommy was crying. Such a childish man. His boyish charm was appealing in the past, but now he just seems like a pathetic mama's boy. Yeah, you're right. If I just listen to Mom and stay with that woman, Tommy's words were cut off midway. Probably my mother-in-law covered Tommy's mouth with her hand. She must have things she doesn't want me to hear. But it's too late. I've covered all my bases and have solid evidence, so no worries. And by the way, where are you? Tell us, and we'll come over. I declined her request. It was a bit of a hassle for me to find a temporary place to stay. I'm not gonna just tell her that easily. We're strangers now, so I doubt we'll ever meet again. Oh, and expect to hear from the lawyer soon. Please handle it when that happens. I had a few photographs in my hand. In the photo, there was Tommy, his mother-in-law, and an unfamiliar woman. It was taken during the time Tommy had said he was on a business trip. A friend who had hosted a party where Tommy and I first met mentioned that they happened to see the three of them while on vacation. The photos captured a moment where Tommy and the woman were entering a room, just the two of them, and another of them leaving the room in the morning. Why? How did you find it? I could hear Tommy's faint voice, almost like the buzz of a mosquito. It surprised me that he even had the energy to speak. Apparently, a friend who had hosted parties for adults continued to do so even after Tommy and I got married. Recently, to my astonishment, Tommy came back into the scene, and that's why I was contacted. At one of those parties, Tommy hit it off with a woman, and they went home together. It seems the woman he was seen with on vacation was indeed the same lady. But Mom said, if you're a man, you have to have at least one affair. She said this lady over here is more beautiful, so why not have a child with her? Tommy's outrageous statement took even me by surprise. I sighed, thinking it must be his mother's doing again. Regardless, cheating is cheating. Whether it was his mother's influence or not, I have no intention of letting this slide. I don't care about the excuses. Just be ready for the divorce process, okay? I also know the identity of the other woman through my friend, so she should be prepared too. Since I don't know your current address, I assume the notice will be sent to your work. At your workplace, Tommy, as I mentioned earlier, I could hear Tommy sobbing over the phone. I could hear his mother's voice saying, "Oh, that's okay." It made me feel sick, but I needed to discuss something else. By the way, the police may be coming to talk to you, so please cooperate, all right? There was no response from his mother. She probably knows what she's done. Did you steal my precious ring and pendant? I have photos from that trip showing you wearing my ring and pendant. I will never forgive this. And just so you know, I've already informed your husband. He was furious. He even mentioned divorce. So your wish of a dream life with just you and Tommy will come true. I was about to hang up the phone. Just before I could, I thought I heard an indescribable scream from her on the other end. Looking outside the window, it seemed the sun was about to set. I wonder where those two will spend the night. Well, with that old shed they have, they'll probably be sheltered from the rain and wind for a bit. That's the least bit of compassion I could show them. Honestly, I don't care. Tonight, I'm gonna sleep soundly. Firstly, I received a message with an apology from Tommy's mistress. She seemed to be involved in the nightlife industry, and there was even an apologetic note saying it was just a momentary lapse of judgment. On the other hand, after a formal notice arrived at Tommy's workplace revealing his affair, it became uncomfortable for him, and it seems he eventually resigned on his own accord. His father provided the compensation money, but he made it clear he's going to be relentless in collecting it from Tommy. Tommy's mother was served with divorce papers from him. It seems there had been issues in the past with her being overly protective of Tommy. His father mentioned that he had run out of patience after this incident. From now on, not only will no money come her way, but she's also facing inquiries from the police on suspicion of theft. Although she had been repeatedly claiming family theft because there was no recognized fact of cohabitation between her and me, she ended up with a criminal record. Now, Tommy and his mother are renting a small apartment and seem to be getting by with part-time jobs. That old shed has been removed, and I've heard a new house is going to be built on the empty lot where my house once stood. I hope from the bottom of my heart that the people who live in that house will be a warm family. Rolling my suitcase behind me, I walked through the airport concourse. Thinking I would soon see my beloved family made my heart naturally lift with joy. I'm heading to the country where my family lives to start a new chapter in my life. I hurriedly made my way to the boarding gate.